So this is sort of a sobering view about how artificial intelligence is today. And I'm a futurist, so I like to look 5, 10, 20 years into the future. So I'm going to give us some signals of change about where the world is changing across different industries. So let's get into this. And as I start talking about technology and where we are today, I like to think about where we came from. When I like to think about technology, I like to think that we're on an accelerated path and have been for about 50 years. 50 years ago, this guy, Douglas Engelbart, was in Stanford. And he did a demonstration that they've now called the mother of all demos. He demonstrated the world's first personal computer. About 1,000 people over 2 days came to see this. And you can actually see one of the lectures online on YouTube if you look for that term. And he demonstrated the mouse, the trackpad, desktop publishing, versions of Skype way before we'd even thought about that company, hypertext linking before the internet really came to be. And no one really thought that this was going to be the future. There were a lot of people that were skeptical that we were going to have computers in our homes. In fact, Ken Olsen, who is the founder of DEC Computing, actually said there's no reason that anyone would want to have a computer in their home in 1977. And now 6 billion people have got computers in their pockets. So 6 billion people have got access to mobile communications technology. Not all of them are smartphones. About half of them today are smartphones. By 2020, it'll be 6 billion smartphones on the planet. That's more people with access to mobile telecommunications devices and the internet than have got access to clean running water in the world. So what's the hierarchy of importance about what we need as humans? Water, communications, the internet. Priorities have changed. And who would have thought that in just 50 years everything changed? But what's been really interesting is we've seen this systemic shift towards companies that broker data, that build the technological foundations of the world. And it's still true today in 2018. The 5 most powerful companies in terms of market cap in the world, Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. And they're not faltering. Last year, Facebook was slugging it out with Berkshire Hathaway for the 5th spot, but they sort of eked them out in the final months. But why? Why has this changed? Back in the day, 2006, we were seeing like oil companies having a huge amount of power, banks, retail empires. That's not the case anymore. And why? Because data is the new oil, and it's an unlimited supply. In fact, data is going to grow so drastically over the next few years that we're not going to know what to do with all of it. I mean, we know this is the foundation of the systems that you build, that data is the thing that really gives the life to the systems that are in place. The behaviors, the transactions, the things that make businesses work, the things that help us make money. By 2025, they think that there'll be about 163 zettabytes of data created every single year. That's the equivalent of 1 billion high-definition movies. And we're only going to be able to use about 0.5% of that for anything really useful, because it's going to travel around in real time. We're not going to be able to necessarily store most of it. But imagine if we can tap into that. That's the new economy. It's the data economy. And why has this happened? Well, we know the theories about exponential growth. If someone comes up with a great idea in technology, then 3 people will look at that idea and build their companies, 6 people, 12 people, 24 people, and it grows exponentially over time. So suddenly you've got this exponentially upward growth and momentum of building more technology, more companies in areas that impact the world. So if we go back to look at mobile telecommunications, it took about 18 or 19 years to hit that 6 billion person mark. And it took about 70 years for landline telephones to have the impact in a very similar scale. So today, things are changing quickly. Someone comes up with a new idea, exponential growth happens on top of that. And that's really what's happened with artificial intelligence. But where did we come from with AI? It's got a long and varied history. You can actually trace it back to the 12th century. The first ideas about automation. There's a guy called Al-Jazari. His nickname was the Dreamer. He was a great Persian engineer. The Persian engineers were some of the greatest engineers in the world between the 8th and 12th centuries. And he wrote a book of 60 ingenious devices. And everything from water pouring servants at your dinner parties to entire boats full of automata that play music together as a band that would actually be powered by the flow down the river. Now, he didn't make a lot of this, if any, of these ideas. But these ideas really got us thinking about what that looked like in the future when we as humans didn't have to do a lot of the drudge work that we've got available. And then during the Second World War, we had amazing people like Alan Turing helping break the Enigma code. And obviously, a lot of his early ideas and the Turing machine and the Turing test still hold a lot of weight when you think about artificial intelligence today. He's an incredibly important man. And then these two guys, Newell and Simon, down at Carnegie Mellon in the late 50s, mid to late 50s. And this is where artificial intelligence got its term. They started building the first intelligence systems. And this was a long, long time ago. But Marvin Minsky and a number of people got together in Carnegie Mellon and started the forum for talking about how the world could be changed through this technology. But why hasn't it changed more quickly? Why is it only now that we're seeing a lot of this momentum? Well, we've had a couple of things called AI winters. So what happened was research would happen to a point, and then the ability to go further was halted because there wasn't the technology that could process the information. It halted because people were starting to lose interest because there was no application, it wasn't working. And that happened in both the 70s and the 80s as well. So things sort of ground to a halt. But during the 70s and 80s, we saw technology gain pace, and the exponential growth started happening. And now we're at a point where AI has progressed from the mid-90s to today at a pretty rapid pace. So up here on the top left, we've got Gary Kasparov thrashed by IBM's Big Blue computer. And then 2011, you had IBM's Watson standing with human competitors in jeopardy and winning $1 million. They couldn't beat him. In 2017, which was a pivotal year for a lot of technologies, you had Lee Sedol, who was a 9th Dan world Go champion, beaten 4-1 by DeepMind. And then DeepMind built a piece of technology I'm going to talk about later and how it works, called AlphaZero, that then learned chess in 4 hours and became completely undefeated. And what was interesting was the artificial intelligence in both the game of Go and the game of chess taught the human players completely new ways of looking at the game and playing, so they helped the game evolve more than the human players have done to this point. It's fascinating how we've gone from beating a chess grandmaster once all the way through to something that learns by itself. And if you think about mobile technology, we would never have thought about having these smartphones in our pockets in this power. But who actually thinks, I just want to take a quick poll, who actually thinks that they're going to have a robot in their home by 2025? About half of people. Oh, more people are, yeah, definitely. It's not that easy, right? And we keep building these robots that kind of look like humans, and everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But we've kind of got wrong perspectives, right? If you've actually seen the film Ex Machina, you see a computer inside of a woman that passes the Turing test. It deceives the individual and manages to escape. I'm sorry if you haven't seen the movie, that's what happens. It's way cooler. There's lots in the movie, okay? It's very, very good. But we've got a problem. So Rodney Brooks, a very, very great thinker about AI and data and how the world's changing, wrote an article for MIT. And he actually said that there's these 7 problems with our perceptions of artificial intelligence today. We always overestimate that it can do something, or underestimate, right? You know, the Terminator machines are coming around the corner and Skynet's going to become sentient in 2025. We're all going to have to run for the shelters and fight for our lives. It's not quite going to happen. We like to imagine magic. With artificial intelligence, it's like, oh yeah, we're just going to put AI in that. If anyone watched the Mark Zuckerberg Senate hearings, how many times did he say, we're going to have AI that does that? And then he sort of retracted back. And it's like, what does he think it's going to be? Suddenly magic? It's going to replace the 30, 40,000 people that by hand categorize and ban people on Facebook and the images? It's not that easy. Performance versus competence. Sure, you can have a system that makes good decisions and lots of them, but will it competently apply them all the time? Competence takes a lot longer. That's why we're having to drive cars millions of miles before we let them self-drive. And we as humans can pass our driving tests at the age of 16, 17. And with relatively few lessons, be given like a 1-ton car to drive around Montreal in, right? With relatively little problem. Then suitcase words, let's throw everything into artificial intelligence. Oh yeah, that's artificial intelligence. What does your solution do? Well, it uses the most advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence. If you ever hear someone say that, ask them how it works, and then really ask them how it works, and start going into the algorithms and how that works, and how they collect the data, and how they train it. And I'd say about 75% of all the people that claim that, especially startups, won't know what the hell they're talking about. Right? Suitcase words. Exponential. You know I talked about exponential growth. It doesn't happen in all cases. If true exponential growth happened to every single piece of technology, then we'd have an iPhone that stored about 15 terabytes of data that would cost cents. If we had a car that progressed exponentially like the computers have progressed over the years, it'd be able to travel at the speed of light and cost about 15 cents as well. We're not quite there. It doesn't always happen to everything. So I always pay close attention to the people that talk about exponential growth, because it doesn't always happen. And really, when I was flying into Montreal, I looked down at the houses and all the road systems and all the cars driving, and there were probably a handful of electric vehicles, and none of them drove themselves. The homes below me didn't have Internet of Things technologies in them, and the prophecy of the new world hasn't been implemented yet, right? Exponential growth will come, but a little bit more slowly in these culturally chastised situations, because we don't change as quickly as technology, right? Because we're humans. Hollywood scenarios, like I said, Skynet is not coming online. Sentience isn't going to happen, certainly not very quickly. And Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't going to come on stage and murder me because I'm the leader of the new world. None of these things are true, especially the last piece. Okay. And then speed of deployment. It just takes time and money to buy the equipment, to prove it out, to train things, especially in artificial intelligence, and to deploy it. It just takes time. We know that if you deploy a solution, people from management consultants come in, they design it, they architect it, they put it in, and it costs millions of dollars to implement these systems sometimes. And that's because it's complex and there's change management, and speed of deployment isn't always as easy as like, here's AI, boom. One other example of that is blockchain. Everyone's walking around talking about blockchain. It's probably going to be 8 to 10 years before any of that technology manages to mature enough to really have the impact that people are promising today. But everyone likes to talk about it's going to change the world, right? Very much like artificial intelligence. But this is kind of where we are. It's kind of a bit of a mess. This is the same robot that I showed a little earlier. This is Atlas by Boston Dynamics. We're still teaching it how to carry boxes, right? It's very small baby steps, but we're going to get there. There's recent footage of this robot running, and they're like, terrifying robot, nightmare scenario. It's like, that's the one video take it didn't screw up, right? Smoke and mirrors. So be aware of that when you start reading about artificial intelligence. In small applications, and I'm going to talk about a lot of them, it's incredibly impressive. Okay. But what about signals of change? I like to look at different industries and really start to look at how these industries are changing through the implementation of new technologies, and in this case, it's artificial intelligence. And let's start with retail. So the family has got a new big sister. Who's got Amazon Alexa or Google Google Home or the Apple HomePod at home? Oh yeah, and it's getting more and more. I ask that question in pretty much every presentation that I give, and it's getting more and more and more. Google are literally giving it away. I was just at an event on Monday night in Vancouver, and there was a donut shop, and people were queuing for donuts, and they got to the front, and they were super disappointed because they got given a Google Home and not a donut. But this is how it's going. It's like, that's how you get penetration. Everyone has it. Oh, just enable it. We can do everything for you. But now you've got a situation where your mum and dad are being made obsolete. You've got a big sister that's connected to the internet that's got the answer to all the questions that you ever want to ask it, except maybe not the existential questions about what does it mean to be. And they'll still give you some witty kind of amusing, jokey answer for that, right? And we've actually got versions of this that are happening for kids now that teaches your kids manners. So a parent's going to be made obsolete by artificial intelligence. We've got to be careful. I just actually spoke about this at Google 2 weeks ago. And they've asked me to come down to speak to a whole bunch of designers down there, and a bunch of other tech companies have as well, because we're starting to miss the point about what technology is doing for us. It's not supposed to replace us. It's supposed to augment what we do. But you see like 2 6-year-olds talking to Alexa. It's like their big sister. And in Seattle, Amazon's rolled out their new Amazon Go technology. And this is a store that you walk into, you can scan your Amazon app, it knows who you are, it uses hundreds of cameras in the roof for facial recognition, it uses pressure pads and RFID on the shelves, you can pick off some broccoli, you can pick off some cupcakes, put it back, take it back again. And it can recognize who you are, and you can literally put it into your basket and walk out. It's really important to understand why they've done that. We're trying to make the world as frictionless as possible. Now, there's a theory by Daniel Kahneman who talks about fast and slow thinking. Slow thinking is about going into a supermarket, putting the cupcake into your basket, and walking around the supermarket for 5 minutes doing your other shopping, and then taking that cupcake and just putting it on a shelf that someone will come along eventually and come and find it and put it back to where it needs to be, right? How many people have had those guilty moments in supermarkets? Yeah, everyone. That's slow thinking because we've contemplated the decision. Fast thinking is actually the decision to take it off the shelf. It's like, I want that. That looks delicious. Now imagine if you walk into an Amazon Go store, I want that, that's delicious. I want that, that's delicious. Oh, I just need that. I like that. Let's do that. It'd be like IKEA in a way, right? It's like, yeah, I need some more of those things. And then you have like 500 of those hangers at home, and you got more of the things. And that's fast thinking. I actually think that this technology will remove the friction and drive up how much you'll spend per visit to the Amazon Go store. So I actually predicted that Amazon were going to buy Whole Foods as well, which they did for $13.7 billion. And on the same day, the Amazon stock price went up by $14 billion, so it was kind of a neutral purchase. It's kind of fantastic, or kind of strange and dystopian. But the Amazon Go store was architected to look exactly like a Whole Foods store. It's a signal of change. What does the pattern even look like? Well, if you actually look at this architecturally, you've got the IMS, you've got the AWS, the cloud system, cameras and sensors, Wi-Fi, store, Amazon Go out. The most important part of the product is you. In fact, if you're on social media, you're the product. If you're walking into that store, you're the product. The data that you bleed, that contributes to that growth of data exponentially over time, is the behaviors that you have in that store. I always like to think that you could maybe game the system, though. I do a lot about looking at surveillance and how we can avoid certain situations. And this could be shoplifting this year down at the Amazon Go store. In fact, if you go down there, make a video of it, I'd love to see it. But you can actually hide your face using different kinds of makeup and whatever. And soon, artificial intelligence is just going to stop that because it's going to be able to guess who you are by your chin and just the gait of your walk as well. So this is sort of going to be soon to be obsolete. But maybe the shoplifting is going to be like this in the future. When I used to walk into a store and just take whatever I wanted and walk out, I used to call that shoplifting and maybe got into trouble a couple times when I was 15. Don't do that, kids. Okay. But then Amazon's taking AI even further to look at the data repositories that it has to actually learn about what's happening in those systems, and then it's going to anticipate when you run out of something. If you're a young family, you're going to use a ton of different things. washing powder, disposable diapers, those kinds of things. It's going to be able to anticipate. And the moment that you run out of something, there's going to be a knock on the door, and there's going to be an Amazon delivery person, and they're going to say, there you go. And you'll be like, that's amazing. And you're not going to hate that idea at all. Seems a bit creepy right now. And really, Amazon's also got this solution now, the Amazon key, where you just let them actually open the door themselves and drop it in. They're almost doing it themselves. I see this in Vancouver in my building. The amount of times in the past year, you walk down the hallways and there's Amazon boxes everywhere. They seem to be able to get into every building anyway. The concierge in my building trusts an Amazon person. Why would they do that? And Amazon's saying, you can trust us just to even open your front door. Have a Google of that and you can see what's been happening. It's not always good. But it's about how we change. So retail and other workforces, it's about hybridization. It's about our capability and the capability of the new systems. And here's one example in Walmart. Walmart has now got these robots, this kind of strange-looking tall robot on the right-hand side there. And it goes around the supermarket and it scans the shelves. So instead of people doing shelf stacking, taking everything that they need and going to an aisle, realizing that half of what they put on isn't needed at all, and then they have to go back and they've lost some of that productivity, they can now take the results from these scanning robots and actually do a better job. Hybridization of that particular role. Amazon's fulfillment centers, about 25 of those fulfillment centers use armies of these robots to go around and to help people pick what they need. It's fascinating, the automation. But Amazon hasn't stopped hiring people. In fact, their hiring has gone up exponentially as well, because the more throughput you can have using this technology, the more that you can do in business, the more you can grow your business, the more you can do about employing humans to help add the wisdom to the system. And then what about finance? This is another big area that's going to change drastically. The amount of digital assistants that are going to hit us is growing at such a pace that by 2021, it'll be like 1.8 billion digital assistants in the world. We've already got like Siri, and Samsung bought Viv, and we've got all of the assistants in the different HomePods and whatever. It's all pretty standard. There's lots of companies building this out. I know the guys in Vancouver at fin.ai. It's hard. I was chatting to a friend the other day, I bumped into him, and it's like, implementations are hard with this technology. This isn't plug and play. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of training. It takes months to make something work. It's not that simple. It goes back to my idea about, what's effective when you deploy and how fast it takes to deploy. But what's interesting, robo-advisors and robo-advisory platforms are going to manage about 10% of the global assets by 2020. How many people have used a robo-advisor online to do savings? Okay, not that many right now, but it's coming. I actually did a presentation when I was here last in Montreal about 6 weeks ago to a group of advisors that advise doctors and surgeons. And you could just see the fear of what this technology could do to their business, but that it can actually improve their business. Mobility, moving around, transportation.
Okay, day one of self-driving. Are you ready? Go.
Oh, this is weird.
This is the future.
Yeah, she was like, is there no one driving that car?
I knew it. I was waiting for it.
He'd certainly never know that there wasn't someone driving his car.
Yo, car.
Selfie.
Thank you, car.
Thank you, car.
I would have loved to have seen the footage of the people screaming bloody murder. No, like, what's it doing? Any of the failures. Waymo has actually got the best reputation of human takeovers in terms of it driving its own car. It's about every 3,500, 5,000 kilometers, there's one human sort of takeover of the vehicle. It's learning much better. Uber's is terrible. About once per mile, the people running Uber vehicles. that are self-driving have to take control of the car. It's kind of interesting, you know, Google's lens on the world. Everything's great, trust us. It's not easy. Roads are not easy at all. There's so many different changing dynamics, and weather, and people, and other vehicles, and the changing state of the roads. I mean, potholes, right? If you've got a Tesla, don't do this. The autopilot is not an autopilot so much these days, but it's being billed as such. But you know, the promise is you don't have to drive. There's actually an ad, a Lincoln ad, that's defiantly saying, you know, it drives itself, and the guy like crosses his arms when he's on the motorway like that. I don't think we're quite there yet, and there's been some problems. But these cars have got sensors. They collect terabytes of data. They process it and work out the context of the world, how things are changing, to try and avoid people dying. About 3,200 people die every single day globally from human-related car accidents. So if we can just reduce that by even 5%, that's a lot of lives that we're going to save annually, right? So that's the promise of these cars. The world's not going to be 100% safe. It never has been. It never will be. But by the mid-2020s, we're going to find that self-driving vehicles are going to be the norm, the standard. All new vehicles will be shipped with this technology on board. Whether we'll choose to do it or not will be our discretion, and also at the regulator's discretion as well. But this is actually a graph from the Department of Transportation down in the States. Well, they actually think by 2023, 24, the number of cars that we're just going to literally call on ride-sharing apps that are going to drive us without there needing to be a taxi driver in there, self-driving vehicles, is going to start to overtake the amount of vehicles owned. I'd love to not own my car. I'd love to have an app. In fact, Ford's just turned around and has been changing the game and how they're thinking about the world. And there's already self-driving trucks that can drive all the way from San Diego to Florida without any human interaction at all. So it's happening across different industries. So trucking and taxis, municipal transport will be the first place where self-driving vehicles will come in. But what's really interesting is Ford came out just 3 weeks ago and said, we're going to stop making cars, traditional cars. We're still going to make an F-150. We're still going to make a Mustang. We're going to make a couple of others, but they're all going to be hybrid, and everything's going to be electric going forward, and it's all going to be about ride sharing. And in Miami, they've actually started a pilot around on-demand ride-sharing of Ford vehicles. But here's a timeline. And what's fascinating about this timeline of 5 years, autonomous passenger modules will be available, electric vehicle dominance within 10 years, about 2028, 2030. But within 20 years, human-driven vehicles legislated off the highways. We won't be able to drive. And that's going to start happening in cities as well. And what's fascinating about these three predictions that actually came from the ex-vice chairman of GM, Bob Lutz, someone that was entrenched in the industry. He said that he's sad to see the end of the automotive era. And we've seen this kind of trouble recently. This is the crash that happened with Tesla. And we saw the Uber tragedy, and there's been a couple of other crashes as well recently. But this ended one man's life because he made the choice to trust autopilot, even though he was warned that it wasn't good enough. And he trusted the system, and the system let him down. And he let himself down. But the way that technology companies are looking at this is from a technology perspective and not a human perspective. This was part of a larger press release from Tesla about this that said, hey, do you know what? Using our technology, fewer people will crash. And this is what gets me. The reason that other families are not on TV is because their loved ones are still alive. And that was a call out. And earlier in the press release, it was like, this man was not smart. He did not take our advice. He trusted the system. He's dead. I'm sorry. He's dead. I don't even think they said sorry. So we've got a really screwed up world that we're heading towards. And I think we need to be a little bit more empathetic and connective. Who's taking responsibility for the deaths with Uber and with Tesla? Still being worked out, right? But thinking about that and moving on from mobility, what about care and safety? And there was actually someone that came up to me at the talk in Vancouver, and he says, I've got a daughter, and she's Down syndrome, and I think that these automated systems gives her a life that she couldn't have today. On-demand vehicles, jobs that can help an individual do more. And it was fascinating to me, but care systems are coming into place. Sure, there's the swanky guy in his apartment with the robot that tells him how to cook his broccoli. But really, it's when it goes into care homes and care of the elderly and the sick. And this is where there's a lot of research and there's a lot of commercial products coming to market. Right? These robots can be there, telepresence. You can be there with your mother, your grandmother, whoever. And that robot can look after, it can dispense the pills, it can look after who they are. They can carry them around. I don't know why everyone's so happy here. I mean, you paint a picture of a bear on a robot and then the world's great, huh? This is down in Japan. But in Japan, the amount of people being born is reduced drastically. In fact, they're going to have a problem with having the amount of workforce available to do works. So they're actually seeing a boom in the robotic service industry, and it's going to boom by 2035 to about $4 billion annually. That's 25 times its current level. So what happens? What's the solution to there being fewer people? Putting automated solutions in place, and even robotics. Still got a long way to go with robotics and to make it work. But there's some simple implementations that happened recently. This is a security bot that was deployed in San Francisco. They programmed it to keep homeless people from sitting outside of their office. Isn't that horrible? Well, people took it to heart. And they really had a bit of a rebellion there, right? I don't think people really loved that robot. They found it, I think they actually found it after one evening, and it had been carried and dumped in a fountain somewhere. So you've got to still be human about the application of the robotics and artificial intelligence that we're using. But these are running around Silicon Valley right now. We're going to deliver your food. We don't need delivery guys and girls anymore. Put in there, completely tamper-proof. These are super heavy if you've actually ever seen them. And it delivers from A to B really quickly in urban centers, using robotics, using artificial intelligence. And then how do we learn to treat robots with dignity? Well, we teach kids at a younger age. So this is Shelley. This is just a really interesting research and development project. And Shelley is a turtle. And if you hit Shelley, Shelley disappears into its shell, and it glows red and makes a bad noise. If you stroke it, it purrs like a kitten. And it loves you. But maybe we're already at a situation where the kids are getting used to the idea of robotics and about what that can be in the world.
I want a robot. I want a robot.
It's not even a robot. But it kind of looks like a robot, right? How does that kid, it's about 18 months, how does that kid know that that's kind of a robot? It's going to be your friend, right? Not our mortal enemy. Maybe in military situations, all of the robots are going to be dressed up like friends. Discuss, right? But there's a huge impact on the world. Things are starting slowly. Exponential change will come. The impact will be great. And the impact's going to come through that data growth, predicting the demand for services, advisory services, and that hybridization, voice control, facial object recognition, and the service industry. This is where we're going to be looking for industries to grow, and for governments to change their policies and regulations, and for people culturally to start accepting new solutions. And I was asked very specifically in this talk to talk about how do you build this stuff? And it was a long time ago that I used to build this stuff. And I know a lot about data and predictive analytics and AI and the algorithms. And, you know, I didn't want to bring a whiteboard on stage, and we don't have like several hours to go through this. But this is how it works. No, I'm sort of joking, but we've probably seen a lot of these diagrams before, right? There's a lot of work that we already know how to do. like acquisition of data, processing, model engineering, and then execution and deployment. That model engineering, execution, and deployment are the steps that we're really working hard to refine. And there's a lot of companies doing some very smart things. The first one being Uber. Now, Vancouver doesn't have Uber, and it breaks my heart. But when I'm in a city that has Uber or Lyft, I prefer to use Lyft. That's all I use. Like twice as much as I would normally use in a city if I needed to use taxis. Now, they actually use open source artificial intelligence systems, which I think is really smart. Hadoop, Spark, MLib, to help them build out their solutions. And what's happened is they've created a centralized library, and the team that innovates in this area just pushes out platform solutions to other people that build on top of them. And then they've got the algorithms, they constantly change and transfer their knowledge into them, and they constantly learn. When you actually order an Uber taxi, there's about 6 or 7 algorithms that are working in the background to make sure you get the right kind of driver in the right location in the closest proximity to you. Have you ever been to a situation where it's switched out your drivers? It happens in Lyft a lot. It's because they can actually work out how to give you better service by getting that car to you more quickly, or a car to you more quickly. And going back to finance, now I originally had this in the finance section, but this is quite possibly my most favorite piece of artificial intelligence that I talk about in this entire presentation, because it's about something that we all hate doing. Insurance claims. Hands up who likes doing insurance claims. Said no one, right? Check this out. Lemonade's a company that deployed in New York City. What's interesting is you pay your premium, and if you don't use any of it by the end of the year, you can then donate that to charity. It's breaking the insurance model in pieces, but the AI that they use does a lot when you look at what it does under the hood. So they've got dozens of generated data points, and they can actually track suspicious activity. It's really hard to game this, almost impossible to game this system. And it actually predicts when you need it before you even know it, which makes me wonder what data it collects and what you have to give it access to, right? So what they do is they understand the nature of each of the claims and whether it's a state of emergency as well. So for those things that, say it's a laptop and you're trying to work and you're an independent contractor, you've got to get that money quickly. You've got to get and buy a new laptop and get back to work. They actually work out if it's fraudulent or not. And that interface encourages you to be more honest. Why do you think it makes you speak to the camera? Why do you think it looks at your face? You can tell when someone's lying, right? If you're trained, you can definitely tell when someone's lying. It can work out if they give you the claim straight away and deposit the money and give the instructions to the bank, or whether it goes into arbitration. And what's interesting, they worked out with this system, they just need to answer one question. Should it be handled automatically or not? And I think this is the simplest architectural design-based solution that you can have. It's like it answers one question, and the question is the thing that's fundamental to their business, and it builds trust with your customer. The quickest process of a claim they've ever done was 3 seconds. And they actually ran 18 anti-fraud algorithms in that time using artificial intelligence. They sent wiring instructions to the bank and informed Brandon, who was the customer, that the claim was closed. Done, 3 seconds. Who's ever done an insurance claim that quickly? Said no one ever, right? Hands up who wants to use this for their home insurance? Yeah? And anyone with your hands down, I don't know why you don't want to use it for your home insurance. It's not here in Montreal yet, but it's coming. Very, very large insurers have invested a lot of money in this company, and it's going to be the future. And I was looking at the fun side of things. Advertising. I worked in advertising for a number of years when I moved to Vancouver. And I did a number of campaigns for people like Taxi, and one of my clients is actually in Montreal. Well, the team at McCann in Tokyo decided to get over the problems of not having money to hire a creative director for every campaign and actually build their own AI called AI CD Beta. And they kind of started to help teach it empathy and instinct, foresight and creativity, because that's what you need to do good advertising that sells us things, you know? How can you teach a computer to make us cry? Because when we cry and we've got that connection, we need to buy the things. Right? Their idea was to feed in dozens of ideas and other campaigns so they could get used to a novel combination of different ideas, and they can look at conceptual spaces, and they're teaching this over time. And it started to build a system that could generate brand new ideas and scripts and concepts. So the creative brief was this: the type of brand, the campaign goal, the target audiences, and the claim that the ad should make. You know, fix that, AI. And then they said, oh, here's the elements as well. Tone, manner, celebrity, music, context, and the key takeout. Oftentimes, this is what a client does when they give you a brief. We need to do this. Wouldn't it be good to use that guy? And whatever. So that's what you go and do as a creative team. So they fed everything in. You know, parody, high school baseball, movie star, Hollywood, big names, the boss and subordinates. And this is the advert that they released. And at the same time, they had a human CD produce an advert as well, which got voted as being the favorite advert but only by about 2%. This is the one that the AI came up with, and I kind of find it quite compelling. It was for a mint that stayed fresh for 10 minutes. Can you imagine? I've actually worked with humans that come up with ideas that nuts. It's kind of cool. But let's go back to what I was talking about earlier with Alphago. We know that Alphago and Deepmind, the company that was bought by Google, developed this technology to beat the 9th Dan Lee Sedol in Korea at the game of Go, which is thousands of times more complicated than chess. And then they worked on this technology with AlphaZero, which I mentioned earlier. And this paper, and I'll share all the links in this presentation as well, Mastering the Game of Go Without Human Knowledge. So the original AlphaGo used every game of Go that had ever been played as its basis for learning the game, and then started playing other people and got really, really good. AlphaZero started not knowing anything at all. So we talk about artificial intelligence as like, here's the data, and we train on the data, and then we go ahead and do the business of prediction and do the business of artificially intelligent systems. This system taught itself. And here's Professor David Silver, who's the main author of that paper, just to explain a little bit about how it worked.
AlphaGo Zero doesn't use any human data whatsoever. Instead, what it has to do is learn for itself completely from self-play. So the reason that playing against itself enables it to do so much better than using strong human data is that, first of all, AlphaGo always has an opponent of just the right level. So it starts off extremely naive. It starts off with completely random play. And yet, at every step of the learning process, it has an opponent, a sparring partner, if you like, that's exactly calibrated to its current level of performance. And to begin with, these players are very, very weak, but over time they become progressively stronger and stronger and stronger. People tend to assume that machine learning is all about big data and massive amounts of computation. But actually what we saw in AlphaGo Zero is that algorithms matter much more than either compute or data availability. In fact, in AlphaGo Zero, we use more than an order of magnitude less computation than we used in previous versions of AlphaGo, and yet it was able to perform at a much higher level due to using much more principled algorithms than we had.
So after about 40 days of learning and playing itself, it became completely unbeatable. In fact, it played other players and other computer simulations of the game of Go, and it beat them 100 games to 0. Completely undefeated, and it started to teach people new ways of playing Go, even further than it did before as AlphaGo. So it kind of makes me wonder how that can be applied to larger systems in the world. If we can have enough sensors and experience feeding into a system, then potentially it could do everything from like redesigning retail environments, redesigning buildings, redefining business as a whole, learning how stock markets can work, a whole bunch of different applications. This is just the beginning of this. I'm very excited because we know that if we can liberate a system from data and give it algorithms, it could be incredibly powerful. This kind of thing will actually liberate a lot of the challenges that we have with self-driving vehicles at the moment. And what's really interesting is that that piece of AI started to have critical thinking, coordination, social perceptiveness, active listening, and complex problem solving like we do have as humans. It's pretty fascinating to me. But how does this transfer into the future of work? Is there going to be devastation, mass loss of jobs? Well, there's disruption, we know. We know that worldwide there's going to be a huge amount of impact from a financial perspective, $15.7 trillion boost on GDP worldwide by 2030. And that's around productiveness and new business. But does it just replace us, push us out of the way? Mainstream media goes out there and says, oh, you know, there's devastation, all these job losses. Yes, people are saying that jobs are going to be affected, and in Canada, about 25% of Canadian jobs will be disrupted, but it'll be the tasks within jobs. There's things that we don't like to do. For example, I never used to like dragging data out of databases, putting it into spreadsheets, and formatting spreadsheets. That's a whole part of my job that I used to have as an analyst, that if that could be removed by something that's an artificially intelligent system, I could be liberated to do more things, and that's going to be the new way of the world. It's going to be about redeployment, not unemployment. At no point in history have we had technology come into an employment ecosystem and destroy millions and millions of jobs. The Industrial Revolution, when computers came in the 70s and 80s, it's not happened. I don't see it happening with artificial intelligence. I see the world changing. I don't think that there'll be taxi drivers on the streets by 2030. Do you know what? There's a lot of those taxi drivers that have got good qualifications and could be in much better jobs, and the economy is going to be growing, so we're going to need them. In fact, about 80% of taxi drivers today are immigrants, and 20% of those have got graduate degrees or better. So why aren't we using those people? This report I was reading, that 300 people out of that population in Canada driving taxis are like qualified surgeons. Why are they driving taxis? Don't we have a shortage of surgeons? But it comes back down to this, the data model, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. We're driving ourselves up the chain in terms of value in the workplace. And the systems that we're going to put in place are going to help customers do better work, because the drudge work of knowledge, information, and data is going to be removed out of the way. Sure, at the knowledge level, we're going to have to interact a little bit more with that technology, but artificial intelligence is going to be the thing that does a lot of that for us, and we're going to be operating in what I call the wisdom economy. And that wisdom economy is going to be the thing that drives us forward faster and more exponentially than ever before, because we're going to be able to use what our brains are supposed to be used for. You know, wisdom, finding new ways forward, strategic thinking, and not just doing a lot of the drudge work to get us there. So it's the ecosystem of human and the machine, and this is where we leave things in this presentation. It's about us being augmented by this capability. It's not about us being replaced. I was in Montreal airport and I saw this. This is Pepper the robot, which is made by SoftBank, and it's supposed to be artificially intelligent, emotional robot. It was awful. This was about 6 weeks ago. I looked for it. I was going to make a little video like to put in this presentation, but it'd gone. I think it was wearing a Habs sweater or something, right? Just awful, like creepy hands, didn't work, didn't help me. Asked it a bunch of questions, nothing. But what about the intelligent enterprise? How's that going to change? We know that SAP is evolving what it's doing. We know that the capabilities and the outcomes that they're trying to achieve are in line with how the world's changing. That's because you're very smart people and you've got great product direction. And artificial intelligence can potentially help all of these things. But I think this is what's going to happen with AI. I think that AI in this industry around enterprise intelligence is going to increase internal collaboration, knowledge sharing, data mining, and speculative design. Speculative design help us reinvent the future. Support for data scientists, automated data collection, aggregation, analysis, more insights, and increased customer agility. Data scientists don't like sitting there dragging data out of databases, but they have to do it. In fact, it's probably over 50% of their jobs. They'd rather do the analysis of the data and then run things automatically in the background. Number 3, new platform integration. Everything from the Internet of Things, blockchain as it matures, robotics and artificial intelligence. And increased focus on human-machine customer experience. So if you're in experience design, your world's going to get really interesting. In fact, I think that everyone in the room is going to have a role in experience design in the future. That comes with the wisdom economy, gaining pace. And then number 4, increased scale of deployment and breadth of functionality. We know as technology gets faster, it gets cheaper, but it means we can do more. I don't think your business is going to shrink. I think it's going to grow and grow and grow because you're going to be able to do more for every single customer. And then what I think is going to be a big tipping point, and this is going to come in the next 3 or 4 years, is native mobile AI integration. All the new phones that are going to hit the market, all the new cars that are going to hit the market are going to have native artificial intelligence on the chipsets. I was just down at NVIDIA last week in the Valley. Whew. They're doing some crazy, interesting stuff. And who would have thought a company that built, graphics cards and sound cards for gaming would suddenly be driving the majority of self-driving vehicles that are being developed out there in the world? It's fascinating times. But what about us? Well, I talked about humans and what drives us. We want certainty and variety, significance, connection and love, growth and contribution. When we do build these systems, I think a lot of the people have been moving so quickly that they've forgotten that these are the important things to consider. We've been like this for thousands of years, and we're going to be like this for thousands of years into the future. And it doesn't look like it's going to change. Sure, we can build systems that are going to act like it cares about these things, but really we have to put humans at the center of the solutions. We have to work with them. It's about human and the machine. That redeployment is going to be about us walking forward with artificial intelligence, and that's my optimistic view of the world. And that optimistic view was shared back in the day by George Bernard Shaw. We're made wise not by the recollection of our past, but for our responsibility for our future. And that responsibility is what we all have. Welcome to the future. That was artificial intelligence. Thank you.